What do you do when doing the right thing leads to suffering? When you've obeyed God, yet everything seems to fall apart. Many people believe that following God means life will always become easier. But the story of Paul and Silas tells a different story. Paul had received a vision from God. He was called to preach the gospel in Macedonia. He obeyed without hesitation. He wasn't chasing his own dreams. He was following God's direction. While in the city of Philippi, Paul delivered a young woman from an evil spirit. She was finally free, but her owners were furious. They had been making money by exploiting her condition. Now their source of profit was gone. Instead of celebrating a miracle, they dragged Paul and Silas before the authorities. False accusations were made. The crowd turned against them. Without a fair trial, without justice, they were beaten with rods, again and again. Their backs were torn open, their bodies bruised, their strength nearly gone. Then they were thrown into prison. Not just any prison. The jailer placed them in the innermost cell, the darkest part of the prison. Their feet were locked in heavy wooden stocks. Every movement caused pain. Every breath reminded them of the beating they had endured. Imagine that moment. No freedom, no comfort, no explanation. If anyone had a reason to complain, it was Paul and Silas. If anyone had a reason to question God, it was them. But then the Bible gives us one of the most remarkable verses in all of Scripture. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. Think about that. Not after they were released, not after they were healed, not after the miracle. Before any of that happened, they worshiped, they prayed, they sang. Their chains did not silence their praise. Their pain did not steal their faith. Their prison did not change their confidence in God. Why? Because they understood something we often forget. God is worthy of worship, even when life doesn't make sense. True worship is not based on comfortable circumstances. It is based on an unchanging God. The other prisoners were listening. Perhaps they had never heard songs in a prison before. Perhaps they expected anger, bitterness, despair. Instead, they heard faith, and heaven heard it too. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. A great earthquake struck the prison. The foundations trembled. Every prison door flew open. Every chain fell to the ground. In one moment, God did what no human being could do. But here's what is even more amazing. The greatest miracle wasn't the earthquake. It was what happened afterward. The jailer, terrified by what he had seen, fell before Paul and Silas and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" That prison had become a place of salvation. The place of suffering became the place of someone's eternal hope. Maybe that's why God allowed them to be there in the first place. Maybe the prison was never just about Paul and Silas. Maybe it was about the man whose life would be changed forever. Maybe you're in a prison of your own today. A prison of fear, a prison of anxiety, a prison of disappointment, a prison of unanswered prayers. You keep asking God to open the doors, but perhaps He's doing something inside you before He changes what's around you. Never underestimate the power of worship. Praise doesn't ignore pain. It declares that God is greater than it. When you worship in the middle of your trial, you're telling fear that it doesn't have the final word. You're telling your circumstances that your faith is stronger. You're declaring that your hope is anchored in the one who never changes. Remember Paul and Silas. Their praise came before the breakthrough. Their worship came before the miracle. Their faith came before the freedom. Perhaps your greatest victory won't begin when your chains fall. Perhaps it will begin the moment you choose to worship while they're still there. Because when your heart belongs to God, no prison can hold your spirit, and no chain is stronger than the power of the God you praise.